Hello, everyone. I see you're drifting in. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. But we had a lot of people register for this session today. We're really excited about it. I hope you are too. We're expecting almost 100 registrants. So we had almost 100 registrants. So we expect a nice sizable crowd today. So welcome. And we will get started as soon as I see the filtering in is slowed down. And I think we're there. So welcome everyone to our Focus Forum today. For those of you who don't know, I'm Rita Riker, President of Focus Greater Syracuse. I'm delighted to see so many people here today. Today's topic is environmental sustainability, and we have several experts who are actively pursuing this goal. So as a reminder, we're scheduled for an hour today, and we will be recording the session. We've shared your questions with our panelists. Thank you for those who submitted those questions. You can also ask questions in the chat as we move forward. Focus Board member Brian Hoke will be monitoring the Q&A. Now, I'm very pleased to turn this over to our moderator and Focus Board member, Bob Haley. In addition to being Vice President of the Focus Board, Bob is a renowned architect who is actively involved in sustainable design strategies, focusing on the best use of natural and built resources. Bob.
Thank you, Rita, and thank you to everyone for joining this topic. We have four experiences of different points of view on sustainability, and each of them is going to give us their view on how they see sustainability today. We've been seriously involved for about 20 years in terms of training of our professions and so on, and delivering services to clients as well as municipalities. We're going to begin with Diane Brandli, who is the founder of Greening USA, is a professional interior designer, and has more than 20 years of experience in this specific category, which includes sustainable professional delivery to clients and municipalities, especially schools, and also champion advocacy for sustainability to the general public. Diane, let's start off if you would. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks to Focus and to Bob for inviting me to be involved. Greening USA and I'm here representing Greening USA. I've been in it since the beginning, so I'm very invested in what we believe. So thanks to Focus, thanks to Bob, and thanks to you for being here. Bob originally asked me to talk about Greening USA yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So briefly, for those of you who don't know who we are, yesterday we began organizing in 2003. We became a 501c3 in 2004. There's Peter Arsenault, our intrepid 12 Trades Program Manager, who's still with us to this very day. Shout out to the core organizing group who came mostly from the design and construction industry. But we very early on just decided that this has to be a very broad-based coalition. We developed a mission statement that says we advocate for sustainable communities to the benefit of local economies and environments. Our goals were to educate, obviously, about sustainability and to identify, promote, and create synergies with like-minded organizations. And we've done a pretty decent job with that. We created 2 educational outreach efforts. One is called the 12 Trades of Sustainable Communities, and the other one is called Sustainability Academy. Sustainability Academy is grassroots educational outreach. Early on, we worked with school districts to bring programs there. And for many of the past years, we've worked with the local zoo to help them put on Party for the Planet. And then on to the 12 Traits of Sustainable Communities. I saw a lot of questions. Actually, I saw one question, and the question was, how do you define sustainability? And this is Greening USA's definition. And after we created this, and it was pretty much emulating the LEED rating system for green buildings, we decided the community needs a rating system. And after we created this, we created our Green Bag Lunch series, which was to focus on each one of these traits and just discuss different viewpoints. I can't hope to describe this to you completely, but we boiled it down, and we did not invent anything here. This is, we scoured the country and looked for best practices and put them all in one place. So we talk about government leadership, local economic resilience, sustainable land use planning, sustainable transportation, water-related infrastructure, green buildings, definitely part of it, energy from non-fossil fuels, waste material management, local culture, art, and entertainment, which we believe is equally important, quality public education that teaches sustainability and actual facts, public health and safety, and community engagement, which is what you're here for. And so thank you for that. If you want to know more about this 12 traits of sustainable communities, please visit our website, greeningusa.org. And there we are on May the 30th, 2012, presenting the city of Syracuse with an award for using our 12 traits to create a draft sustainability plan. And right there in the middle of things, you see Peter Arsenault, our 12 traits program director. And if you want more information on the 12 traits, please email him at 12traits@greeningusa.org. So today, what we're up to, and some of you may know that we've been holding a number of green bag lunches related to Micron, and I saw questions from some of you about the Micron project. So what we've done is we've created a very informal coalition of local like-minded groups, and we've also joined a national organization called CHIPS Communities United. They were founded in Silicon Valley, and they are pulling together communities from all over the country that are having these CHIPS federally funded projects being built in their communities. And we signed on to their letter asking the semiconductor corporations to proactively pursue a productive and cooperative relationship with the communities hosting their facilities. So very much looking for a dialogue. So tomorrow for Greening USA, and for all of us, you know, what's the most important thing that you can do? And our answer is obviously educate. Educate friends, relatives, get involved with your local school board, make sure that they're actually teaching facts. Lead by example. This is a wonderful thing you can do. Find ways to live more lightly on the planet, but by the way you purchase things, by the way you conduct your life here. So please know that we cannot do it without you. And this quote from Margaret Mead that was circulating for a very long time in the early days of the sustainability movement, but it's as true today as it was then, which is never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So thank you for your kind attention. You can, you know, find out more about us by subscribing to our newsletter, following us on Facebook, or the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. We also record all of our events and put them up on the YouTube channel. So please check us out there.
Thank you, Diane. That's perfect. What a good start. Couple of keywords there. Economic impact. Look at the starting origins of Greening USA and Micron today, and how this group is now joining a national best practices group, watching this new industry impact our area in terms of environmental planning forward. Also education, the key, and what Diane's group has done at the zoo with young kids in our community should never be forgotten, teaching to green aspects to our young children. It's a perfect segue also into Lauren Staniec, who is a design professional as well. And I have to admit that the three of us came together 15 to 20 years ago with Ashley McGraw Architects and our champion, David Ashley, and the training program that we all kind of picked up and began to lift. So Lauren is an educator today at OCC, which is a great place to be, Lauren, and also a design professional who has helped over many years design schools, projects, and especially in the commercial industry. Lauren's also one on the executive committee of Sustainable Syracuse, which provides connections to businesses in terms of their understanding and education and the opportunities in a changing economy, which is what we're in at this point. Lauren, you're on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And a little bit of background, I became engaged in sustainability through my education. I did an undergraduate degree at RIT in interior design, and I had a teacher that really inspired us. And it was in reading the Iroquois' approach towards the 7-generation principles that I really connected to the idea of sustainability. And it was one of those aha moments for me where it all just clicked and the world just kind of fell silent for a minute. And I knew that was the direction. So upon completing my career, as Bob suggested, I was really super fortunate to come back to Syracuse and train under some of the best and brightest. Bob included, Diane, not to mention David Ashley. And I was thrown into some really aggressive development landscapes as well that were really exciting. I was working as one of the sustainability coordinators for Destiny USA. And so there was a lot of trial by fire that happened throughout my early career, which was exceptional. And it really led to this idea of limiting beliefs and that we need to shatter this idea. And so now as I find myself running my own business, which is Rehabitat, with a focus on interior design and sustainability related services, our focus tends to be on the existing environment, building or keeping existing buildings in play today. And that's one of the core values that I tend to carry today with me. My time at OCC is a little bit of a happy accident. I always knew that I wanted to be in education. I always knew that my reach in expressing sustainability was going to be best received and also the most far-reaching in an educational platform. So OCC is really one of the jumping off points for me where I feel very strongly like the best foot forward, the best chance that we have at a truly sustainable future starts at education, like Greening USA said. So OCC is one such platform. My business is another platform. And then I have a third platform that I do this on, which is a podcast called Subject to Change Sustainability, where you don't necessarily have to go to college or pay a tuition fee to have these conversations about sustainability, which I think is really important. So sustainability to me today, really, this comes down to knowledge sharing. We are losing so quickly our knowledge resources. We seem to reinvent this wheel over and over and over again, where we get new students in who maybe don't have a lot of understanding about what sustainability actually is. And what's becoming more alarming to me is that our students are so focused on learning how to take tests at this point in time and learn the information that needs to be on a test, that this idea about innovation and daydreaming and creativity is actually really hampered with students when they come in to our classrooms. So for me, knowledge sharing and innovation are at the forefront of what we need to be doing when it comes to sustainability. Additionally, I keep hearing conversations across all spectrums of age groups about how, you know, we're setting these unrealistic goals that we don't currently have technology for. And that's where I try to relay to people that this idea of these self-limiting beliefs are really problematic, that we've been an innovative culture. We need to be returning to this idea of innovation as we move forward, because you're right, where we are, we're not going to be successful, but looking forward, we do need that creativity. And so we've been looking at different ways about bringing things like daydreaming even into a classroom, and to see kids. One of the ways that we do this is by way of, it was, oh, I hope I don't credit the wrong school, SUNY Oneonta. SUNY Oneonta has something called the 2040 project that they started, and it was this really forward thinking, kind of half game, half, daydreaming scenario, half reality. That's a lot of halves, but getting to this point where you're really thinking critically and stopping thinking about the limiting beliefs, stopping thinking about what we have to work with today, and starting to innovate for what we need for tomorrow, as we start to look at upcoming events that could realistically happen. And so last year, I actually tried this. Instead of doing a final exam, which the students were very pleased by, in one of my sustainability and social equity classes that I teach up here on campus, we focused so much on this idea about, okay, what happens if these really terrible events happen? What happens if there's climate refugees? What happens if there's catastrophic world wars? What happens if these things start to come into play? And what do we want to envision? What do we want to see? And it was at the end of that experience for them that they all said, I didn't know I was allowed to think this way.
Mhm.
And that's terrifying.
Yeah.
So for me, what I'd like to see is, I think we need to go back to this idea of civic engagement, and not this idea of civic engagement as it relates to clicking a button, saying you like something, having that be where your ideals sort of end, or your proactiveness ends, but really starting to go out and understand other people and learn from other people and learn from people that don't look like you, and really start to create truly inclusive and equitable communities, by way of starting to understand that at the root of all of this, we are all human. And at the root of all of this, we really need to team together in order to affect actual change. And I know that this feels very, socially based, but in my opinion, for us to be truly sustainable and for us to think in 7-generation terms, we really need to get to this place where we're listening to each other. We can be compassionate to each other, and understanding that we're all human. We all have our past. We all have our presents. We all have our differences, but it's in those differences that we can create these really exciting opportunities. So things like critical thinking, doing fun games, and those, like these one-on-one things that you can do with kids in your lives, mentorship programs, coming up with scavenger hunts, having kids daydream, having kids start to woodwork again. You would not believe that every single semester I have to teach about 28 kids how to use a ruler.
Yeah, I know.
So as we start to talk about moving forwards, we need the knowledge, we need the historic knowledge of things like design, of trades, of engineering. We need the ability to think more globally, but at the same time react very locally, and start to get excited that we're facing these problems, but we have this ability to innovate our way out of it. But we have to give our younger generations the tools to be able to do that. I don't know if I'm at the end of my 6 minutes, but I feel like I've gone on for a long time and I should just stop.
Thank you. Thank you. That was terrific. And you said some very significant things. First of all, what I love most is that OCC and your efforts here is about future job training. We are in a transition for our area in long-term education, long-term jobs as it affects our social community. Let's skip right on here. Thank you. We'll get to more of that later. Owen Kerney is our next speaker. He's the director of the city, New York. New York City, Syracuse City Planning and Sustainable Director in the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. I should pause because this is a major change for the city of Syracuse in its organization of our development, Owen is because with rezone is a champion, a long-term effort there of best practices across the country has come into Syracuse now. And with that, this past summer, a change in city and county attention to both of those large arenas for sustainable planning. Owen, I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bob, and thanks, Focus, for the opportunity to speak. And I should, I'm gonna correct you, Bob. I am the recently appointed Deputy Commissioner for the Planning and Sustainability Division in the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. Kind of a mouthful, but a relevant distinction. And Bob, you touched on it, and I'm here with my colleague and former colleague, Dan Kwasnowski. The city and the county used to have a shared planning agency, which was reorganized in June of this past year, and the mayor established essentially reestablished the city's planning and sustainability division in neighborhood and business development, which is great. That's obviously the mayor prioritizing planning, prioritizing sustainability, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. I should also note that I am currently, that division, planning and sustainability, is a one-person division. You're looking at them, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to note the city will be advertising a sustainability planner position. I think realistically, you may, best case scenario is you'd see that posted next week, if not by the end of the month. The city posts everything on Indeed, so check it out. This is obviously a group that's interested in sustainability related and planning related initiatives, and the city will be bringing at least advertising and hoping to bring somebody on early next year. So with that, our work, my work, can broadly be summed up as focusing on improving quality of life in the city. And I'm going to talk a little bit about projects we have done, we're preparing to do, to talk about how that all relates to the topic of the day, which is sustainability. Much of the work that we've done over the past few years has largely been grant funded and working with partners at the state and federal level. And I think that's important. There's a lot of funding there for municipalities, for towns and villages, for cities, for counties. And so a lot of the work that we have done include, Bob, you touched on rezone, that was funded through the New York State Energy Research and Development Agency, NYSERDA, which folks are probably familiar with. They have both municipal programs, statewide programs, but also residential programs for sustainability initiatives. And one of which we recently completed, Bob, you mentioned in this summer, was our rezone, update our zoning and zoning ordinance and map, which a lot of sustainability improvements were accomplished there. And we'll probably talk about that in more detail in the Q&A. I won't go deep into that, but thinking about new affordable housing requirements, not incentives, but requirements, increasing protections for open space, for trails, for wooded areas, and for waterfronts, and updating our historic preservation ordinance, all things that affect a sustainable and healthy community, as you know. And you'd probably do 5 minutes on each of them if I had the time. Neighborhood planning, working with Empire State Development, recently completed the Lemoyne area neighborhood plan for the Salt Springs neighborhood, which again focused on a lot of things, safety, but also pedestrian and bike improvements in and around campus. There's a H.W. Smith School is over there, Lemoyne College is there, and it's a part of the city that doesn't have, the sidewalk, bike lanes are lacking over in that area. So working with our colleagues in the Department of Public Works to develop recommendations as part of the plan, but have begun implementing some of those recommendations. New sidewalks, anybody that's familiar with that area, go through that area, new bike lanes, new sidewalks in that area. Again, thinking about how we create a walkable, safe community, not only for students and young people, but for all city residents. And the other one that I'm actively working on, or worth noting is the local waterfront revitalization program. That is a New York State Department of State funded program focused on the lakefront area of the city. I'm working closely with Dan and his team in county planning. But as the lights there, to talk about sustainable, the lights go off in his office. That is going to make that plan, that local waterfront revitalization program, is going to make a series of recommendations to improve this underutilized area of the city, particularly focusing on environmental health, water quality, recreational opportunities, and connectivities. That's an area that's situated essentially adjacent to downtown, the North Side neighborhood, which is a growing area of the city, the regional market, which is making investments in their campus, Destiny USA, the Empire State Trail, and Interstate 81, with a series of improvements on not only the 81 corridor, but North Clinton Street, Bear Street. So doing the planning work at the citywide level, the neighborhood level, and even the corridor level to think about sustainability. Also working with not only those state and federal partners, but working with other city departments. Planning is multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency. That's really kind of what we do. And working with the Parks Department on their urban forestry master plan, which recommends increasing tree canopy in the city from about 25% to about 35%. Again, immediately improving a variety of public health and environmental outcomes by accomplishing that. Working with the Department of Public Works, and I see my colleague Ann Fordock is on the call. They are leading on the municipal sidewalk program and Vision Zero initiative to both increase pedestrian access and safety in the former, and particularly focused on pedestrian and bike safety with Vision Zero. Also working with the mayor's office on the development of the I-81 vision plan. And Bob, I know that's something that you've been involved with. Our friend and colleague Joe Driscoll's working with an international planning and design firm in Dover Cole, thinking about how the 81 project, obviously a transformative project, can be done in a way to improve public health, public safety, environmental sustainability, economic sustainability in our community. It's such an opportunity, and that I know you guys have held discussions on that alone. And then finally, our office is also planning and sustainability responsible for the update of the city's comprehensive plan, including sustainability plan. And with that sustainability hire, later this year, early next, we intend to ramp up those efforts. Particularly, we are working with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation on funding for a climate action plan and updating our greenhouse gas inventory, which was last done about a decade ago. And also working with Department of Energy. I actually need to get a response to them regarding additional funds for solar lighting in the city. So we are working on a variety of policies, projects, initiatives in the city that really aim to improve environmental health, economic health, public health in our community. And doing so, I was going to end there, but I also want to mention, I saw one of the questions was, how are you using data to do this? And I think that's a real relevant question. And we're relying on and working with the relatively newly formed Office of Analytics, Performance, and Innovation, API, here in the city to develop these projects and initiatives that are more responsive, frankly, more experimental, and ultimately informed by evidence and facts. And Diane mentioned the importance of that earlier. The mayor is that he is supportive of that right from the top down. And so covered a lot, and happy to talk through any of those initiatives during the Q&A. And I'll turn it back to Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Boy, you hit the fact of how complicated this all is. Let's give Dan the next step here, because we're trying to save time for Q&A. Dan, I was happy to see as a ESF graduate and at the county, Onondaga County Deputy Department of Planning. And again, Dan, take it from here, because it's meant to be an easy day in the sense of discussing goals and your efforts and how we can support you. Put on your speaker there, Dan. Yep. There you go.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yep. You're good. Sorry.
So that was great. Yeah, I was looking forward to being last because I wanted to hear what everybody else had to say. And they said a lot of things that I was going to say anyway, so that's great. So I won't belabor a lot of that, but obviously the biggest thing that's happened in my life in the last year is director of planning for the county is adoption of Plan Onondaga. And I would encourage and urge everyone to go to plan.ongov.net and check out that plan. That is the first countywide land use plan adopted by the legislature unanimously, without any negative comments at the public hearing, in over 25 years. The interesting thing about Plan Onondaga is that we built off of, yeah, thanks, Owen, in the same year as rezone was adopted, so that was a big year for us. The plan revolved around 5 themes. I'm just going to run through those 5 themes real quick. I'm not going to even go into them. I'm just going to list what they are. And then kind of talk about what we're doing to implement it already, which is actually a longer list. But creation of strong mixed-use centers is the kind of foundation of the plan and one of the most exciting aspects of it. And one of the areas where we really engage a lot of local communities. And I'll talk about what we're doing with local communities in a second. Greenways and blueways was probably number 1 though. When we did a lot of public engagement and outreach, whether we were at pop-ups at the Apple Festival or at the Westcott Fair, that was one of the things that really resonated with people was our protection of greenways, establishing a greenway system in the county. And agriculture is a consistent theme in the county. In 2022, the legislature adopted a updated agriculture and farmland protection plan. The county is probably one of the more successful counties in protecting agriculture. We've protected over 13,000 acres and counting. We have lots of projects in the pipeline, some big, some small. And so we just continue to keep working on that. And housing in neighborhoods is obviously a big one. Right now, we're doing a housing study, which is in the list of our implementation measures. And community mobility is another big one. This is probably one of the areas where I feel like, especially as a government, we have the most to do because they are our roadways, whether it's city, county, state, local, villages. We have a lot to do there to make sure that people can get where they need to go. And we've been working really closely with Centro as well. The interesting thing about the plan is we didn't speak to sustainability directly for various reasons, although I would love for somebody to evaluate it. In terms of sustainability, I think that would be a really interesting study to do. But we have 3 guiding principles, and they were community engagement, number 1, and community engagement, not just for the plan, but continuing into the future with all the projects that we do, economic development, and quality of life. And those sound like a 3-legged stool to me, but you tell me what you think. And there's a good discussion in the plan about those guiding principles. So yeah, I'm just going to jump into implementation a little bit. We've been busy over the last year, kind of gearing up to really hit the ground running with this plan. A lot of it, has to do with, mostly to do with the faith that people put in us to create this plan, and the contribution that the public made, that legislators made, especially the county executive was a great leader for us, for my department, and encouraging us to get this plan through and get it done and have it be right. We have, in the process of distributing almost $1 million and counting to local governments to create a comprehensive plan or to update their plan. Some of them are the first plan that they've ever created. And that's a huge shift in the planning landscape in Onondaga County. Local governments get this plan. Whenever I talk to them about it, they've read it, they understand it, they were a big part of formulating it. And I think that's one of the most impactful things that my department has done over the last couple of years is really engage those local communities, engage those local governments, and really have gotten the stoking the fire, I guess, to do local planning, and they see the need for it. So I think that's a great thing. The next level will be kind of doing deeper sub-area planning, really design-based planning out in communities to really prep those areas for mixed-use centers and appropriate development. We have a $2.5 million Greenway and Blueway fund, and we have a lot of projects, that are looking to utilize that fund, but we're hoping to also use the money that we have and go get other money to really make those projects very impactful in defining and protecting our greenways and blueways and creating a blueway trail system. Continuing agricultural planning. First countywide housing study is underway with Charles Buki, the same CZB, the same firm that did the city study. So we'll have a very complementary study to the cities. We have a $450,000 federal Safe Streets for All grant, which is a action plan grant, and that will make us eligible for up to $30 million a year, not just the county, but the city and local municipalities. $30 million a year for bike ped projects throughout the county. We just need to put that action plan in place. And so that's going to be a very significant city and county-wide effort to get that done. And that's part of our Vision Zero policy. And then we also are working, this is probably a little bit under the radar for most people, but we're working with our partners at SMTC, the Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization that handles all the federal money for highways, and working on a Route 31 transit study in the northern suburbs. And a lot of it it's directly related to the Micron project, and looking at what levels of development do you need to create a transit system in that corridor, and what is that transit corridor going to look like? What can it look like in the future? And what policies do we need to put in place now so that we can have greater community mobility in that part of the county? And so that the local municipalities also understand, oh, okay, if we want better transit, then we're going to have to really, do some specific planning to make sure that that can happen in an efficient manner. I think that's going to be a very interesting study, I think. But SMTC is leading that. We sponsored it, and that should be hitting the ground running early next year. Also, I want to add that our next door neighbor here in the Carnegie building, the Office of the Environment, is looking at, they are updating our climate action plan. We have one that's gotten pretty old at this point, so they are looking at redoing that plan, looking at our GHG inventory, and also looking at a climate smart community certification at the county level. And they are also leading, and we are contributing to a tree canopy study, and starting in the northern suburbs and really doing a tree canopy inventory. We work closely with Steve Harris, the arborist for the city, to kind of look at what they did in the city and kind of duplicating that effort so that we can track changes in the northern suburbs better and make sure that we're protecting the forests that need to be protected, and also replacing the forests that might be impacted by projects up there. I'm going to cut it off there. I could say a lot more. I did go to ESF. My graduate degree is in environmental policy. I've studied a lot about sustainability and sustainable planning. My undergraduate degree is in environmental policy and from SUNY Plattsburgh, which was a great program. I've had a lot of different jobs, a lot of different roles, and this is by far kind of the furthest reaching one I've had so far. So let's get into the questions.
There you go. Thank you, Dan. That's terrific. Boy, it's complicated and it's massive. Let's go to the Q&A session. Owen? I'm sorry, Brian.
Thanks, Bob. I'm Brian Hoke, a volunteer here at Focus. Thanks to the panelists and all of you for being here. We had questions submitted in advance, which I'll pose to the panelists. Feel free also, those of you in attendance, to submit them. We'll see if we can get to them. First up, Life, who is a Citizens Academy graduate, asked about the differing definitions of sustainability. And in particular, right, as I'm watching you all from private and not-for-profit entities, from education, from different branches of government, how do you collaborate? What are the challenges perhaps to collaboration? I assume there are more benefits, but interested from hearing from each of you about how that works, given your very different roles in all working towards presumably a similar goal. I assume we're not going to dish dirt about each other and say bad things about city versus county or public versus private, but just curious, how does it mean you come from very different walks of life, right? The ways in which you work. Curious if anybody has anything to say about that.
I'll jump in. Obviously, I think the plan as far as policy goes, countywide policy, I think it kind of speaks for itself. I think if you dig in there, you'll see kind of all the right answers in the right direction. I like what Lauren said about, really having the courage to look farther in the future and putting that vision together. And we really worked hard to do so in a way that's very accessible to people. And I think Owen and I have spent a lot of time together. So if I refer to Owen, that's why. We know that sometimes the way we talk is very important. But I will say that I think my focus, one of the things that really resonates with me is an old saying that plans are useless, but planning is essential. And I think that's really important to know. And as we're looking at growth, I think our planning paradigm is shifting. And I think it's a lot of people see it as a chance to kind of right wrongs, maybe, hopefully. But I think it's more a chance to let's build a better community. How can we really all benefit from this? Which is a different way of looking at it. But I think that planning is essential part is really how do we use planning as a tool to make people talk to each other, make people share ideas and get those ideas. Because I know Owen and I have talked about this before. I mean, if we don't get ideas from the public, I mean, it's just he and I banging our heads together trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. Because we know what to do and how to do it, or how to do a lot of different things, but we don't know what's going to work in the community. And that's why I think planning is super important to me. Is just finding out where people are at, what issues they're facing, and how do we align our interests and all work together.
It must give them considerably more buy-in, right? If they have a part in crafting the process, right?
Absolutely, right.
I was just going to jump in, Brian. Thanks. You mentioned, and others have mentioned, community engagement. That's what we're talking about here. The best ways to engage, whether you do it through advocacy or in your formal roles. And both you, Dan, and Owen have been great supporters in the focus effort in education. What's the best way to get the engagement to be effective to your work?
It continues to change. Obviously, for some of the projects that we're working on, engagement looks different than it did 10 years ago. It's not just simply showing up to a neighborhood meeting. There are a variety of folks in the city. Not everybody can access information the same way. Not everybody speaks the same language. Not everybody's interested in the same things. There are always obviously competing priorities, which is not unique to the city. So with the projects we have, we increasingly have to use a variety of tools to actively engage people, to get feedback. I've worked closely with the neighborhood and business development team, which is a much larger team. I'm one division in it, but there's the economic development division, the housing team, and they have neighborhood level planners. So I'm increasingly working with those folks to get out into communities, talking to folks about issues. Sometimes it's thematic, sometimes it's area focused, using online tools, using in-person meetings, using surveys, and just using, interviews with people, just talking to people at different events. That part of the local waterfront revitalization program we set up at the regional market. And that's a great place to talk to people, to get candid feedback, real candid feedback about what people want to see in that neighborhood. What are things that we need to improve on? Things that, although I live in the city and I frequent the regional market, I didn't know. And our consultant team didn't know. And some of my colleagues didn't know. So engagement really drives a lot of what we do. I know it drives a lot of what Dan does. And so it's looking at those best practices, working with advocacy groups like Greening USA, looking at nationwide best practices, bringing those ideas to the community, but you have to make sure you're working with the public, working with neighbors, working with business owners, property owners, to make sure that those policies that you're developing based on those national best practices are relevant to local neighborhoods.
Good fit from here. Yeah, gotcha. Lorna, Diane, did you want to come in on this collaboration between different entities? Don't have to, but just want to give you a chance if you want to pipe in.
It's just such a web in every time we kind of come to this topic, it really takes all of the different, it takes all of the different, even I'm going to call them silos if people are like, it takes the educational components, it takes the community component, it takes the governmental component, it takes, it takes everybody, right? Like it takes all of us, and then even getting into private work and trying to kind of raise the level of understanding of people who want projects done, developers, single family homeowners, and everybody in between. So to me, you just can't think about sustainability without thinking about it being like a web of information.
Makes sense. People coming at it from their own perspectives, their own selfish interests, right? I mean, as they should in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa asks in the Q&A, I think it's relevant to this thread of conversation. Do you see partisan politics as getting in the way of sustainability initiatives? I suspect that doesn't add to and contribute to the success of these initiatives, but anybody care to comment on that?
I do. Can I? I'll jump in first and then others can. I think it's definitely getting in the way. It's burning energy. Mm-hmm. It's keeping people focused in, it's like misdirection. It's keeping people focused elsewhere. I even see it in my classroom. Being in a community college, we have a variety of students from all different types of backgrounds. And I can see how fear plays a really big role in stopping conversations. And so it's really important. That's why I put that stress out there of getting to know other people and coming to realize other people's perspectives, because everybody's background is their background. It doesn't make them wrong. It's just their experience. And we have to find ways to be compassionate about that experience while also trying to move something forward. Please also don't mistake me for condoning something bad. I'm just saying that there's an understanding that needs to be created.
Gotcha. Very good.
What I'd like to say is, first of all, the sustainability movement has largely been associated with liberal people who have liberal viewpoints. And that's wrong, because sustainability is all about all of us. And listening to other opinions, and frequently other opinions are right. Frequently the liberal community is right. But this is not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about what is the right thing to do for the community to make it thrive all the way into the future. The challenge is, with community engagement, is number one, people have incredibly overwhelming lives with family, with work. It's really difficult to bring people into community engagement when their dance card is already full. And then when you're trying to pull in Central New York is blessed with an incredible number of organizations that are looking into different aspects of sustainability and trying to pull those together into a coalition. It's actually happening to a certain degree, but also to a certain degree, there are organizations that just want to stay in their silo. They don't, want to be part of the rest of us. So that's another challenge. But, the partisan politics really shouldn't be partisan, because this is about all of us and all of our future. It's not liberal or conservative. It's just sustainability.
Gotcha. We had quite a few questions, unsurprisingly, about Micron, right? Several of you touched on the topic already in your remarks, but curious, what are the challenges, perhaps the opportunities that this massive change in our community happening not too long from now bring with respect to sustainability?
Well, I could jump in on that because it affects every single one of the 12 traits. And Greening USA has just learned just how overwhelming this topic is. Mm-hmm. Getting involved with this national organization and a really long list of experts in a really long list of different topics that are related to this project. So we're totally overwhelmed. I noticed that John Presbiora, who's part of our organization, he's our vice president, in the chat posted that we have a December 8th Green Mag Lunch yet again on the Micron project. And yet again, we have found more experts to talk about it. Thank you, John, for reminding me. I should have said it. But yes, overwhelming. Just, if you have a specific expertise, now is the time to take a look at the project, and because we need your expertise.
Great, thanks. Others on the topic of Micron? Anybody else want to come in?
There's a lot I could say about
it ain't no small thing, right?
It ain't no small thing. But what I will tell you is the thing that I think is relevant to this conversation and really reaching the individual, right, is all of those comp plans that I'm working on with towns and villages, and that we're funding. And people ask me, what should we do? What should we do? And I said, go through your planning process, listen to your residents, have a good engagement process, and think about if and how much growth you want, and what kind of community you want to be, and what you want it to look like, and how you want it to perform. And I think if you do that, you're going to come out just fine, and you're going to have all the answers you need. And we have plenty of capacity to absorb the growth. We have plenty of capacity, and I think we need it. I mean, we definitely, the more we look at the numbers, the more we see that we're not unlike other communities. All the demographic factors and everything, we really need this injection for a lot of different reasons. And this is a big injection for sure. I think bigger than any of us anticipated, but I think, I have a lot of faith in people to manage it. And I have a lot of faith for us to figure it out and get it right. So, and I will say that talking to other communities that are facing the same thing at the planning level, when they see our plan, when we talk about it, they're like, I wish we had a plan like that. Other communities go, oh, you should talk to these people. So we talk to them and they're like, oh, we're not even there yet. So I feel like we're in a good place, and I feel like it's a huge opportunity for this region to really get things right. And I think in line with sustainability is to really make a better place for, I won't, my kids will benefit from it way more than I will. Let's put it that way. And it's nice to know that my kids have an option here, which, let's face it, anybody that has, my kids are 17 and 20, and I would have just assumed that they were going to go somewhere else, to be honest with you. That would have been, but I grew up in an area I wanted to get out of, so, which wasn't here. So maybe that's just my disposition.
Good point, Stan. And the only thing I would add is that the city of Syracuse is, and I know many of you on this call are probably well aware of this, but was not too long ago a city of 250,000 people, around 250,000 people, and we're about at 150,000 now. And so there's clearly, this was a bigger community, it was a denser community, more people lived here. And so our planning work, and specifically the work we did with rezoning, was done for a variety of different reasons, but I think it does help prepare. As Dan said, being prepared is important, and help prepare that if we do see an increase of residents, an increase of investment, businesses, residents, new housing, that we've prioritized things in that new zoning ordinance, which is based on our land use plan, that focuses on a variety of different things. Again, I mentioned the protection of tree canopy, protection of our steep slopes, recreational opportunities, additional housing types like accessory dwelling units and row homes, requirements for affordable housing, that new housing developments over 20 units must set aside affordable housing, which we know is an issue in our community. Focusing density along our business corridors so it's walkable, and we've got business corridors really in every quadrant of the city. Real traditional, these aren't new ideas, but providing goods and services adjacent to our neighborhoods where people can walk to them. All of these things are, in my mind, I think the city's mind, preparing for somebody mentioned climate refugees earlier, Micron, new folks that are in the community over the next decade on as a result of Micron. So we have hopefully set our land use regulations in a way that is not only can accommodate, but enhance our community with these new residents, with these new businesses.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, we're just about out of time, but thank you all for being here, for your remarks, for answering questions. Bob, I don't know if I'm turning it back to you or Rita, but I'll turn it back to someone.
Well, I seldom pass up an opportunity. Thank you each for your passions and your history and your current lift. I remember a phrase by Charles Eames, who I spent a day with once, a great architect and great designer, when he was being pressed by the media on what is good design. He said, good design is the answer to a good problem. What he meant by that was understand the problem first, define the problem clearly, and then solve that answer. Einstein said when he was pressed by the media, how would you solve the world's problem? If you had 24 hours to solve the world's problems, what would you do? Einstein said, I'd spend 23 hours defining the problem, 1 hour solving it. So let's not get off the track. Thank you all for your sustainable passion and long-term lift. And I'll pass it back to Rita. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and a big thank you to Lauren and Diane and Dan and Owen for your insights on this today. And of course to Brian and Bob for your moderation skills. Appreciate that. As with all forums, this has been recorded, so we will be putting this on our website for if you have others that you'd like to send our way to view this. It's out there, and we find that people do have a chance to come back and review this. Finally, what I'll say is that Focus is a small, independent nonprofit, and we operate on a shoestring. We have one paid staff. The rest of us are all volunteer. And we appreciate any donations that come our way. So you can easily make them on our website, and love to see some donations come in. Beyond that, have a great day, a wonderful Thanksgiving week, and again, thank you very much. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah.